Beyond the Gates spoilers tease that Leslie receives the phone call that changes the shape of her life, an insurance adjuster with a voice practiced in delivering both bad news and unexpectedly good news explaining, gently, that one of Barbara's policies has been settled and the proceeds will be transferred to her. It is the sort of bureaucratic kindness that has a way of sounding like fate. Leslie stands on the small balcony of the apartment she once shared with Eva, the city spread out below in the early blue of morning, and when the news lands she feels something akin to being pulled into the light. The money arrives not as a solution to every problem, she knows that, but as validation, solid, audible, undeniable validation that she is, in fact, Barbara's daughter. The name on the policy, the numbers on the paper, the agent's polite congratulations, all of it confirms an identity she had half believed in, half wished for, and half feared. The sound of her own laugh when she hangs up is a little wild with relief. Leslie's wealth is not entirely new. Years ago, when Peaches had made that bold, disarming revelation about her lineage, a trust fund had been unveiled, a modest, managed account seeded by someone who'd once called Barbara friend, or confidant. For Leslie, keenly attuned to the geography of shame that poverty draws around a person, that fund had been an entree into possibility. But the insurance money is different, it feels intimate and immediate. A ringing bell that says she belongs to a past as well as a future. She is careful at first. The figures are reviewed with the meticulousness of someone who has learned to mistrust praise and money both, but once the reality is absorbed, joy blooms like something both simple and dangerous. She allows herself to imagine a life without worry, a safer school for Eva, a home that doesn't tremble when the heating bill arrives, a future that will not demand apologies for basic needs. There is complexity in that joy. Barbara, to Leslie, is both myth and memory stitched together by other people's recollections, a woman named in stories, a reputation that carried weight in neighborhoods Leslie had only visited as a child. When Leslie asks Anita to recount the years when Barbara was alive, Anita obliges with the sort of detail that makes history intimate. Anita's memories are not simple tributes. They are narrative rooms furnished with both light and shadow. She speaks of Barbara's taste for late-night jazz, of the way she could make a stranger feel as though they had always been known, and of the awkwardness of wealth lived privately. She remembers the small cruelties Barbara accepted because she thought them necessary, and the fierce tenderness with which she watched a child sleep. Leslie listens, hungry for pattern, for the grain of truth behind the rumor. Peach's revelation, the one that had lifted the immediate pressure off Leslie's shoulders years earlier, is a complicated gift. It was Peaches who told her not only that she was Barbara's child but that the trust fund existed, established by Barbara with a kind of private iron will. In the wake of that disclosure, Leslie had been given breathing space. She had been poor for long enough to have learned the language of scarcity and to have acquired a reflexive suspicion about good fortune, yet having the fund felt like being handed a passport into a world that had once been closed to her. She did not chase the question of her father with the same hunger she sought other things. The name of her father rested like an unopened letter in a lower drawer there, but with edges turned inward because the present seemed so immediate and necessary. Money had a way of quieting questions, and Leslie allowed it to. When she received the insurance notification, the feelings sharpened. It wasn't only the financial sum that moved her, it was the recognition, the officialness of being recognized. In the quiet of her kitchen she let herself feel what most people are taught to conceal, triumph as a kind of tenderness. She sat at the table with a map of possibilities spread before her, educational trusts for Eva, renovating the brittle house in which they'd once lived, remodeling the small, stubborn garden where Eva learned to whisper to seedlings as if encouraging them. She felt, without shame, a surge of strategy. Money was not simply to be spent, it was to be deployed as shield, as argument, as demonstration. She wanted Thomas, particularly, to see that Eva was no longer merely the neighbor's daughter or the comfortable choice of some passing hour. She wanted Eva to be a contender. There is a specific cruelty wrapped in social hierarchies, a need to prove one's place by comparison. Leslie had absorbed social humiliation like a slow poison for a long time. Now she wanted to show Thomas, and perhaps show herself, That Eva's station could be altered, that love could be made to sit in an equal chair beside wealth and glamour. There is also a maternal calculus at work. Investment to Leslie reads like both affection and armor. She will make choices with the precision of someone assembling a case, looking to construct an image that will hold up under Thomas's gaze and under the light of Kat's inevitable scrutiny. Eva's former life, the thrifted dresses, the makeshift dinners, the way she learned to laugh into silence when excluded. Leslie wants to rewrite it. Not because Eva is ashamed, but because Leslie has learned the language of leverage. A child who feels the world as a contest will fare better if the contest is rigged in her favor. Leslie begins to plan the things money can buy that are subtle and decisive: a scholarship to a school where Thomas might volunteer, a summer program in a city where Kat's family does not hold the monopoly, a dress or two that carries with it not vanity but an access card to a different circle. Eva is not unaware of the orchestration. She has her own desires, and in private rooms she acts with the immediacy of someone who wants to be seen for who she is rather than for the reality money affords. When Kat discovers Eva and Thomas in an embrace not on the scale of cinematic scandal but intimate enough to break the brittle alliances of their little social world, the collision happens quickly. There had been moments they tried to hide, a hand in a coat pocket, a kiss stolen in the dark between obligations, quiet confessions over coffee. Kat discovers them the way secrets are discovered in small towns, by accident and with a kind of moral indignation that expects everyone else to retreat. The discovery is not merely about the two lovers, it is performance. Kat, whose life has been cultivated like an exhibit, treats the revelation as a slight against both her taste and her ownership of stories. Afterward, Eva seeks Thomas with a clarity that has not been there before. She does not want the romance to remain an illicit thing that can be dismissed. She wants a name for it. She wants what the world calls commitment. Standing outside a dim cafe where the city's late hour smells of diesel and bread, she tells Thomas plainly that it is time to define what they have. Her language is straight and unadorned. Are we a thing? Do we tell people? Are you with me? Thomas, who has been shaped both by his own vanity and by an old shame that ties him to particulars of status, is disoriented by the simplicity of her demand. She forces him to confront the difference between desire that is an escape and desire that is a foundation. Thomas hears, finally, that Eva's claims are not theatrical. In studying her face he sees someone who requires not grand gestures but constancy, who asks to be counted rather than consumed. There is the slow, sinking recognition that the life he imagines, the one that glitters around Kat, is arranged like a stage set he favors but cannot live in. There is warmth in Eva's unvarnished hunger. She is the opposing gravity to Kat's curated allure. Thomas feels the truth of it and flinches. He understands that what Eva asks is not merely a title but a reorientation. He recognizes, in that brief honest second, that he is more at home with Eva, with her bluntness, with the way she knows how to apologize and mean it, with the small domestic joys she values, than he is in the lacquered, performative world Kat occupies. But recognition is not the same as action, and Thomas must decide whether to risk the security of the stage for the complexity of realness. Leslie watches these developments like a general who has been given a new arsenal. She does not tell Eva to be coy, nor does she instruct her in the artifice of social climbing. What she offers is infrastructure. Leslie is not cruel, she is strategic. She channels her attention into practical aid, a portfolio of educational opportunities, a set of introductions that are as much about safety nets as about status. She meets with advisors and with the woman from a boutique school who talks in soft, decisive tones about curricula, internships, and match lists. Leslie sits through the conversation with the attention of someone who has long been excluded from the room. She decides to fund a placement. She arranges for Eva to meet a scholar Thomas admires. These are gentle, lethal moves in a culture that thinks in appearances. Leslie cannot know whether they will work, but the act of arranging them is a kind of prayer. Anita and Vernon, meanwhile, inhabit a different register of emotion. They have been neighbors to Barbara, or, perhaps more honestly, neighbors to the myth of Barbara, and with Leslie's sudden change in fortune they find themselves on the edge of a new social geometry. They are used to a certain quiet, Life that moves by small mercies and predictable compromises. The weeks following Leslie's insurance windfall are busy with small disturbances. Vera, never a fan of disruption, notices a van parked outside the house almost every morning, an unfamiliar logo, a man with careful hands measuring distances with a gaze that says he knows property lines better than he knows people. When an oversized box arrives at their door with Leslie's name on the return label, Anita hesitates. The box is heavy and wrapped in the sort of paper that glints in the light. It's both severe and polite. Neither Vernon nor Anita expected a largesse from Leslie. In their minds she remains, despite whatever money the world may have assigned her, one of their own. The gift feels like a demand. Anita is the kind of person who saves buttons and birthday candles. She measures generosity by how it affects the soul of a household. Vernon, on the other hand, sees patterns. His life taught him to watch for edges, and Leslie's money is an edge. He is suspicious of motives. Is the gift gratitude, or is it an instrument? Could it be a prelude to something else, a public claim, or an attempt to rewrite neighborhood histories? He imagines Leslie making a donation to a local museum in Barbara's name, renaming a park, placing a plaque on the wall outside the grocery store that reads, "Grandly, in the memory of Barbara." Such gestures hold the power to beautify a neighborhood but also to rewrite the order of things, to make some memories official and others invisible. The box that arrives contains something both banal and contaminating, a small, elegant surveillance camera system, and a note from Leslie that reads, simply, "For your safety, with love." The note's lightness is the thing that stings. To Anita it feels like an accusation. She reads the subtext as, "You have not been careful enough, you need watching." To Vernon it smells of bureaucracy, the kind of surveillance wealth buys to protect itself and to remove the burden of accompaniment. Leslie, in her mind, is generous. She sees the gift as practical protection. She thinks, genuinely, that she is doing a neighborly thing, providing the means to keep their home safe now that she herself can afford the measure of peace that cameras promise. But generosity distributed from a new place of power always looks different to the people who have always lived under a different calculus. There are slabs of history behind Leslie's decision that she will not show at the first glance. Memories of nights when petty theft or opportunistic neighbors took advantage of thin wallets, of times when Eva's toys disappeared and no one asked. Leslie's instinct is to remove that vulnerability for those she cares about. She is not trying to humiliate, she is trying to fix what was broken. But in neighborhoods where privacy is a fragile currency, where reputation is built over picnics and careful silences, a camera feels like a gavel. Anita resents the implication. Vernon bristles at the aesthetics. Somewhere in the exchange there is an upset. Certain threads of the past will be knotted tight in new ways, and some people like knots because they secure the fabric, others hate them because they tighten. While these domestic negotiations occur, there is another current moving under the water, the question of Barbara's death itself. In Leslie's euphoria she is careful not to make the insurance call into a conspiracy hunt, but there are hints that some who watch her are interested in more than her Kleenex box of good fortune. Peaches, who revealed Leslie's parentage and who remains a figure between friendship and opportunism, calls with a sort of warmth that means she has news but that it is not necessarily welcome. "You should watch what you say," Peaches murmurs in a low voice that is half apology, half warning. Leslie senses the tone of someone who knows more than she lets on. There are rumors, faint but persistent, about others who would have had motive. There is talk of an old flame of Barbara's who turned up in the edges of social lists, of businesses where her influence was felt, and of documents that might or might not reveal more than a polite obituary ever would. Leslie does not yet want to go there. She cannot let suspicion dilute this hard-won joy. It is too immediate, too necessary. But she is not naive. She stores the warning like a small stone in her pocket, something cold to touch when the air grows too warm with celebration. There is also the matter of the father. She might have dismissed the question for years, but the voice of curiosity is a resilient thing. The insurance settlement, the revived connections to Barbara's circle, and the movement of people in and out of their lives make the old questions creep back into the corners. Who was Leslie's father? Was he someone who could be traced through business ledgers or whispered in society columns? Or was he someone ordinary, invisible to the architectural language of her new life? Leslie's satisfaction with money has not entirely silenced the ache of belonging, it has only complicated it. In the week after the insurance windfall, Leslie moves through the city with a new posture. She buys a blazer that fits like a found truth and schedules meetings with the kind of people who can make school placements happen. Eva is given a budget that feels enormous and freeing. She navigates it with a mix of gratitude and stubborn independence. Thomas begins to shift under the weight of choices. Where affection is a thing to claim, he must choose whether to act. Kat, hurt and determined, begins her own counter moves, curating public appearances and conversations that are meant to remind people of what they already think they know about greatness. Vernon and Anita argue quietly about the camera, about whether rejecting Leslie's gift is itself a form of pride or outrage. And somewhere in the margins, someone is watching, not with a surveillance camera but with an interest that is perhaps more financial, perhaps less benevolent. The week closes with Leslie hosting a small gathering. A dinner not ostentatious in the way of the city's major events but significant in the way of intimate claims. It is a housewarming for Eva and an announcement of sorts for herself, a way to place herself within a neighborhood and to make the transitions she has engineered visible. She invites Anita and Vernon as a matter of course. She invites Thomas and mentions Eva, though she knows not to orchestrate what must be earned. People arrive with gifts and whispers. Someone brings a bottle of wine, another a cake whose frosting is immaculate. As conversations wind and the city settles into the low hum of night, Leslie walks to the kitchen and opens an envelope tucked beneath the salad bowl. It is a small, official-looking paper, stamped and folded in a manner that suggests formality. She pulls it free, and for a second the sound of the room quiets. Not because the people around her notice but because the narrative itself pauses as if to breathe. Inside the envelope is a card, not a gift card, not an invitation, but a note with a single line of handwriting Leslie does not recognize. For the daughter of Barbara the house remembers. The ink is familiar in a way that confounds her. She feels that something has shifted in the air, an old memory answering a new question. A voice from a room she thought she had entered at last calling to remind her that some gates open one way and close another. She looks up, and the faces around the table have become blurred with expectation. She sees Thomas, halfway between the kitchen and the living room, and Eva, whose hands are clasped and waiting. She wants to smile and to claim the simple pleasure of what she has cemented, but the note is a small stone in her palm. And when she lifts it the handwriting seems to be a promise of trouble. The sound of the city's distant traffic swells, and the camera in Vernon and Anita's living room uninstalled, thanks to their stubbornness, seems to hum in her mind like the steady heartbeat of something that refuses to be ignored. The night presses, and Leslie realizes that being Barbara's daughter is not just a blessing, it is an inheritance of other people's secrets and debts. She sets the card on the counter like a small, dangerous thing and walks back into the room, ready to speak, but not yet ready to answer the question the handwriting has posed.